What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. Tyler's talking RC. Today we are talking about radios or controllers, if you will. But first, we got a little news that I got to read off to you here. First up, it is the holiday season, and when you guys are seeing this, it'll be Thursday. So the store hours, we will be closing 4 o'clock on Friday, and then Saturday we will be closed for the holiday, and then Sunday back to business as usual. And then the following week, I believe Saturday is New Year's Day. Store hours will be normal, but we do have our New Year's Day race where we do give away a car kit for any participating racers to have the chance to win that one. So that's cool. Not sure on the kit yet. Some type of kit racing buggy is what we usually do. Let's see what else we got. We got me and Tyler P. and Chris have been tossing around the idea of possibly doing a Saturday morning class type deal, basically coming in with your mostly race-oriented things for the time being. Coming in with questions or needing help setting up. We're talking turnbuckles, gearing, tires, just general setup and getting you kind of on the right path with any questions that you may have, like more of a one-on-one type session. The store will be closed, the track will be closed, but we will help you with your car. So shoot us a message or comment if that's something you would be interested in. Also an email. It's rcmadnesstrackandhobby at gmail. All the links are down below for that stuff. So let me know about that. And then up next, we got the live event, the 29th. Still collecting questions for that. I know I got a post up on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, collecting all the comments for that, and obviously anything in person. So we got a little bit of a bank for that. And then we're going to take comments as they come in live. So that'll be cool. We are going to be doing a giveaway. It will be an SCX24 giveaway for anybody that has commented. Anybody will be entered that has commented or posted a relevant question to us. That's how we're going to do that. And then I do have some new Tyler's Talking RC / YouTube channel t-shirts coming. So that should be sweet. We'll probably end up giving one of those away, but we'll at least show them off. And then, of course, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and check out all the other videos and our Facebook page.
And share.
It helps out. What?
And share.
And share, obviously. Owen wants you to share. He wants to become famous. But it helps us all out, guys. But anyway, yeah, thanks for listening to my spiel. Tyler P. also has a little bit of news for us here, so we'll let him talk real quick before we get into the radios.
All right. So a couple things. Talked about this in, was it the last week's podcast?
Yeah.
When we did ceramic bearings.
Also, that video is on my channel too, the ceramic bearings in his transmission.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I actually did a search for B6.3, and that was like the 4th or 5th video.
Nice. Yeah, so, check that out if you want to see the difference.
But this is the Revolution Design.
We're going to play with the Zoom. We'll play with the Zoom in tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Revolution Design
B6.3
this thing is light. Chassis.
Holy cow.
Yeah. They advertise it as a low CG chassis.
That's pretty cool. And
basically, the way they're accomplishing that is by lowering the motor and lowering the battery. You can see the windows for the edges of the battery. Yeah. And that's basically the deal. So the thing finally came all the way from Deutschland. It comes with a different motor plate.
Made in Germany.
Yeah, both.
Very nice.
So it comes with a different motor plate to get the motor down inside this hole, basically. So I think I'll probably see. This is where I get in my own head because the car is really good. Last week was really good, and now I don't want to change stuff because my OCD is like, oh, it's going to change the car. Maybe it'll be bad.
That thing is super light, honestly. Just holding it in my hand like that.
And my car is already at the limit, like weight-wise. So what'll probably end up happening is I'll end up throwing either a battery weight in or something like that. But so that came in. I'm really excited about that. Tomorrow, I'm going to run some laps with a Phantom motor that I just got in the car. So that's going to be interesting to see. I have the Phantom Outlaw motor that eventually I'm going to throw in the car to practice with, not race with. That would be illegal. And in other news, so since I've been running all these motors, I did some impromptu durability testing for Mini Pro and blew both of the flywheel bearings out of my dyno.
Are they a weird size or something?
No, they're standards. I ordered some from Mini Pro. I also ordered their quick release motor mount. So it's basically like a thumb screw that keeps the motor in place versus a bunch of Allen heads, and it's just a pain in the butt.
Right.
So it was worth the order, and I was able to get like a 10-pack off Amazon. They're a 10 by 19 by 5 or something. They're not that odd. But basically what it boiled down to was I'm trying to run my pulls low on the RPM range, because with an electric motor, your peaks all start at low RPM and then your power falls off. It's not like a gas engine that's the opposite, where peak power is up in the revs. So I'm trying to do my pulls at lower RPM, which puts a big load on the belt. How do you fix that? You run the belt really tight. Run the belt really tight. Now you're yanking on the bearings, and you're only pulling on one side of one. You're pulling on one bearing, not both. So it started barking at me a little bit. Let me know it was not pleased. So
what are you gonna do?
We'll get that back up and running, and then I can dyno the Outlaw motor. I'm really curious how different that is to a legal motor. Everybody says it's a huge difference, but we'll see. Other than that, business as usual. Trying to keep the race program on the rails.
That's it, man. All right, so that's our spiel about the news and upcoming things going on here at Madness. So we're going to get right into it today. We're talking about radios. I've got a bunch of radios, quite a few here in front of me, and I got some off to the side because we had so many. We're not going to really talk specifically about the features of each radio, but more of a cheaper radio compared to a high-end radio. So we're going to kind of keep it that way. If you guys want to see a video about a specific radio, definitely let me know, because I'll just do a video breaking down how that radio works. But if we were to look at all the features of all these radios, we'd be here forever. So in light of that, I think I'm going to do it by brand initially, showing you off. I'm going to do a close-up showing you each radio, and then we're going to pull it back and kind of talk about which radios we use and maybe different applications for spending more or less. So I'm going to do a little bit of talking here for a minute because I'm going to zoom in. I think I'll start here with the Spectrum ones, just because I got those on deck here. So I'm going to zoom in for you guys. Now, a pretty popular one. Give myself a little room here. This would be considered just a ready-to-run controller, which I'm sure a lot of you are fairly familiar with. This one comes with quite a few cars. This is a DX3. You can purchase this radio separate from a car, and I do sell them and use them for more than just the cars that Horizon or whatever sells with them. They're not bad. I think they sell these for $100 with a receiver. So I use these a lot of times if someone's building maybe a vintage car and they just want a controller to run their car, or if they picked up a used car without a controller and they just need something. I just want to see if it works. Stuff like that. It's got a few knobs on it here. You can reverse the steering, the throttle. It's got throttle trim, brake rate, steering rate, all that fun stuff. It's really nothing fancy, but it gets the job done. That's a DX3. Next up, did you have something?
Yeah, I noticed. So that was the one that we used on a couple of vehicles that we put together recently for a customer, right?
Correct.
I noticed, and I thought it was cool for a budget radio, that has a switch for throttle limit.
Yes,
where
it
you
does.
Can get 50, 75, or 100%, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so this radio, for not being a digital radio, gives you a hard switch for 50, 75, and 100. Which is kind of nice, if you're going to hand it to a kid or something and you want to do that. But do keep in mind that not every speed control agrees with that switch. So I know I have had some vehicles when I flip it to 50% throttle that the speed control thinks it's not calibrated or something like that. So that's a little hit or miss. But yeah, that's the DX3. Pretty good radio. As Tyler said, we just built a few vintage cars and used those in there, and it worked just fine. Moving up, we have the DX5C, which is arguably probably the most popular one that Spectrum sells. This is their entry point to a full digital controller. Yep, I do have batteries in this one. Nice little screen there. It is not backlit, so working in the dark is next to impossible, but we're not generally doing that. This is 5-channel radio, programmable switches, dials. I use this a lot in rock crawlers for setting up winches and 4-wheel steer, dig units, that kind of stuff. And it's a great bashing radio. I think you can have 10, 15 models saved on it. Just continue to buy receivers. So not a bad radio to get you into the entry level of the digital radios, but it does have its couple downfalls, which we will touch on in a little bit. And then they have the rugged version of said DX5, which is essentially the same software and hardware, but covered in this kind of coat of armor, if you will. And they do give you a little thumb thing so you can drive with one hand. That's mostly for the rock crawler guys that kind of want to film themselves while they drive, but it does work. Essentially the same as the DX5C, but rugged, hence the name. And then they do make a DX5 Pro, but I do not have that one here with me today because I just didn't have one available. But that's a great radio. That one's a little more higher end. I did use that one for racing a little bit, and it worked out pretty good. I don't have that one to show off, but also a very nice radio. And then, let's see, let's move into Futaba. Futaba, I have 3 in the lineup today, which covers most of what they do. We'll start out with the Futaba 3PV. This is a full digital radio. Not a whole crazy amount of features. I don't know if I got batteries in this guy. Power switch up front there. It is a digital screen. Not backlit, kind of like the DX5C. A little bit smaller than the Spectrum. But all in all, pretty solid radio. Got all your basic features, endpoints, travel. It's got a built-in failsafe for the Nitro guys. Expo. And it's got a couple programmable switches. Not quite as easy to program auxiliary stuff as the DX5C. But I do like this for a little more race-oriented. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then moving up the Futaba lineup, you go to the 4PM. A little bit bigger of a radio, a little bit bigger screen. I don't remember if this one's back. This one is backlit, so that's nice. Quite a difference there when you can backlight the screen, especially if it's a darker situation. A little bit nicer wheel. You do get, this is a 4-channel radio, so you do get a couple more switches. We got some down here by your hand and right here. A little bit bigger screen. Definitely some more features involved with this one. But like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into the features. But all in all, pretty solid radio. Definitely feels a little better in the hand than the PV. And then we got one of my personal favorites, which is the 7PXR, which is arguably the top dog radio, depending on who you talk to. This one is a full backlit touchscreen with a bunch of readouts on the screen. I don't know if my camera can even pick that up. But this one is awesome. That's a full-on touchscreen, which it's kind of hard to use because I'm facing the camera here, but I'll try. There we go. See? You can mess with all the settings. I don't want to go too crazy because this is somebody's radio. But this thing has got so many features. It's honestly pretty incredible. The weight is awesome. It feels great in your hand. It's a full rubber grip on the back side here. This is the American flag edition too, so check that out. That's pretty cool. The America edition. All kinds of knobs, switches, dials, literally anything you want to do with this radio. It's even got gear charts on here, curves, fail-safes, 5-position throttle for drag racing. The sky's kind of the limit with this radio. And I believe they have a 10PXR on the way, which should be even more incredible. And then, because I didn't have enough room in front of me, we're going to move to Sanwa, which is the last group of radios before we all kind of deliberate and talk to each other here. Let's go. Yeah, we'll go with the 44. They do have, Sanwa does have a radio below the 44, which I believe they do the MTS, which I just didn't have one on hand. The MTS is more comparable to the PV than anything. Solid radio. Definitely does the job. I don't know exactly the price range on that one. I think it's in the $200 range. But we're going to talk about the 44 because that's the one I do have. This is their mid-range one, I'm going to call it. This is Olin. This is your remote, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So this is Olin's remote. He does have an aftermarket, I think it's Revolution, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Revolution Designs makes these pretty cool aluminum wheels in a bunch of colors. So that is an aftermarket wheel. But that is something to keep in mind, too. If you do get a relatively higher-end radio, there actually is some hot parts for your controller, too. But this is a 44. The interesting thing about the 44 is it does run on a, see if Olin's got it, yep, a 1-cell battery. Olin has upgraded to a ProTech rechargeable. But that is something pretty interesting because it makes the radio incredibly lightweight. So if you're somebody that gets a lot of fatigue in their hand, the 44 is the lightest radio I think that you can get. It is a backlit screen too, I believe. Only just got the film still over it, so I'll just leave that. But it is a full backlit screen with a scroll wheel, not a touch screen on this one. But again, lots of features on that radio. Awesome radio for racing, which again we will discuss in a minute. And then yeah, we got a toss up here now. Yeah, toss me that M12. So this is an M12. This is what I'm using right now. Now this used to be Sanwa's top dog controller, but it is no longer. I'm just using it because what I have left. Don't mind that noise in the back. I think Chris is moving the ladder around. But this is the M12. It used to be Sanwa's top dog radio. It's very big and bulky by today's standards, but it does do the job. Like I said, I've been using this one, but it's definitely a harder one to come by, and it's getting phased out. But I figured it was worth mentioning. And then, arguably, the most popular radio at RCMadness, according to my Tuesday night census of asking for radios, is the M17 Sanwa. Literally, I think 70% of the guys on Tuesday night were using this, and if they weren't using this, the other 29% were using a 44. This is, between this and the Futaba, this is probably I don't know, it's a toss-up between which one's nicer. Again, full touch color screen on this one. It's not a touch screen, but they do give you this touch pad on the side. So that's how you use it instead of a scroll wheel. So it's kind of a, I don't know, not really touch screen, but touch pad I'm gonna roll with. But the screen is very nice. The button, when you click on things, the options are pretty big and easy to read. It gives you a bunch of things to read out on the screen there, telemetry-wise. I don't know if you can see that or not. Again, this is Justin's radio. He does have the Revolution design wheel on it. That is a green aluminum one. I think these run on. Oh, he's got the. That's right. So he's hooked this up with actually a wireless charge pad. So he's just setting it on a pad to charge it. So that's kind of a fun feature you can do with this radio. A little bit of a mod there. I can do a video on that if you guys are interested. Yeah, that's the M17. It's got a little hook there too. Pretty awesome radio, and that's Sanwa's top dog right now. That would be the competitor for the 7PXR at the moment. So we'll get into that a little more too. I think that's all we got. Except Tyler had a. That's.
We can get to that when we get to that.
That's borderline vintage over there.
Dude, it's not even that bad. There's stuff I've got that's way worse.
That would have been fun to bring too. Now we thought about it. But anyway, so we're gonna come back out now. That is my brief synopsis of the radio collection that we have here. Sorry, I'm messing with the zoom here, trying to keep Tyler and Olin in the picture. Yeah, Tyler's out. So obviously, there's more radios out there in the world. Unfortunately, I couldn't collect them all. There's KO Propos out there. They make some pretty good stuff. They're definitely a little more niche market, and they got some crazy ideas going on with their radios, but they do work. They're not the most intuitive radios to use, and you kind of got to dedicate yourself a little bit, but I haven't heard anything real terrible about them. Just don't really personally sell them here at the store, but we can get them. And then there's a couple brands like Fly Sky and stuff like that. Not a huge fan of those. Tend to have some problems when interference and stuff like that. I haven't heard that they do have a new one out, the Noble, I think it's called. It's a little bit nicer. I haven't heard too terrible things about that one, but I think that's one of their high-end runs, like the $200-$300 range. But their cheap ones, I'd stay away if it was me. Yeah,
because those are like radios that you see all over YouTube, all over the internet, where people are like, "Oh, I got this thing. It has a ton of capability, and the receivers are super cheap." And
yeah, I
guess that's the side you don't hear.
I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about the Fly Sky one, so definitely take my opinion with a grain of salt. But initially, we were messing with I'm going to assume they were the cheaper ones, and we were having troubles. One, they were not very intuitive to use. The wheel on the side, they were weird. It took me quite a while to figure out how to use them. But their higher end ones, like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with them, so maybe those are pretty good. So I'm not going to get too deep into that one. I don't know if there's any other brand that I am glazing over here. Someone's probably screaming at me. But
these are the three major ones.
Yeah, these are at least the three major ones that we sell here at Madness. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Well, people are going to say you didn't have Traxxas up here. Traxxas makes their own remote.
Yeah, but Traxxas is basically a ready-to-run remote. It is a ready-to-run remote.
I'm just saying.
But it's honestly, it's not a terrible remote, but it's not in the same class as these guys. Well, maybe the DX3.
Right.
But even I kind of like that DX3 though. To be honest with you, but well, for what it does.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you guys want to talk about what you guys are running, or we can break it down a little further onto what radio to use. I don't know which direction you guys want to go here. So why did you pick that radio, Olin?
All right. So, like I said before, I felt this radio was lighter than the other one.
Sure.
So that's one of the reasons why I went with it. And I like the way that the lanyard
The lanyard
location was on this one.
Yeah.
I think on this one it's on the side. And this one was lighter. And this one, not to go real deep into it, but to switch from car to car, it's really easy. You just hold the back button, you turn on the power, and then it gives you the.
You didn't know that.
It gives you the location.
Tyler P didn't know that.
It gives you the list of all your cars, and you can just scroll
You can
down.
switch
and-
right.
I've been going into the menus like a chump.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. This one has it on there, but it's not as easy as it is to do. I'm sorry.
It's
The
because this one doesn't have the
M17,
physical
yeah.
button. That one's got a physical button, so
Correct.
you can do it without looking almost.
Right. So the M17 has it, but it's
Yeah.
not as easy as this one.
See that even Tyler P learned something on Tyler's
That's it.
Talking RC.
That's
How to change
yeah,
model quickly on MT44.
Yeah,
Hold the silver button, turn it on.
it's crazy, but that's it. But all the other features are pretty much the same. I just like that one feature on this one a lot easier.
Right. So what, Tyler P? What's your radio history?
It goes all the way back.
Let's not go that back that far.
Yeah, no, we're not. I remember the tan Fataba brick. Although we do have one in the back somewhere.
We do have one here. Yeah, we should have brought that.
Or the sticks.
So well, hey, shout out if you're listening to Les Grimmett.
He loves
Two Thumbs Racing.
Yeah.
He loves his stick radios.
He does.
Even though
I should have asked him to borrow that. He was here today too. That would have been interesting.
Was he?
Yeah. Shout out to Les.
He basically runs like a helicopter radio. It's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Good guy.
So I have an MT44. It's the first nice radio I've ever bought. Like I had like a mid-range Futaba years ago when I ran oval back in the AM/FM days, but I love the MT44 because it's light, plenty of model memory, and I don't know compared to the 17 or the 12, but it has more adjustability than I can fathom.
Most of these radios do, honestly.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
pretty much all the same.
I think with some of the base models, you get, steering trim, you get some of the basic
Right.
stuff. And when you get into a higher end radio, it lets you manipulate things that you probably can't with a low end radio. But
Yeah, definitely.
the 44 to me is like the perfect balance between this costs more than my car and I feel like I'm somewhat handicapped by the radio. Like it's right in that middle ground and it's a radio that you can stick with for a long time. So I loved it. Part of the reason why it felt so light was because I came from this.
The vintage.
So,
Here,
well,
Hold it up a little closer for him. I don't want to mess up our camera again. But here.
yeah, we just came back from a minor technical debacle. To be fair, that's not really that old of a radio. It's maybe 10 years old. That was the radio I got when I started running short course here. New to RCMadness. It's not bad. It's got a fair amount of adjustability. At the time, it was branded as an Airtronics, which is what Sanwa was when they imported it to the U.S.
Mhm.
But open the battery door
She
there
got
for me, bud.
she got a full on. Oh yeah.
So this thing runs on 8 AA's.
Good old 8 batteries,
Oh,
baby.
yeah.
It's a brick. And it never occurred to me that it was heavy and cumbersome until I got the better radio. And that was,
It's
I mean,
pretty
it's
crazy.
probably night and day.
Yeah, it is
and that was
really.
when I got up on the driver's stand, and after a 5-minute race, I was like, wow, I feel really good.
Mhm.
Because I had been holding this brick the entire time. And never mind that the 44 has way more adjustability. And, I mean, it's crazy to think that the receivers for that are more expensive than the receivers for a 44.
Yeah.
It was just silly. So,
And that baby's still Airtronics logo
Right.
on there.
it still has the old, because, yeah, I mean, that was what Sanwa was for decades in the U.S. was Airtronics.
Yeah, just for anybody that's not aware, sometimes you might hear some of us call an M17 an Airtronics radio. It's because Airtronics and Sanwa were essentially the same company, except they basically transferred to a U.S. distribution, and they just dropped the Airtronics name altogether,
Right.
and just kept Sanwa. So if you hear one of us say, "Oh, I got the Airtronics radio," or something, we just mean Sanwa.
It's the same thing.
It was Airtronics for the better part of 30 years, so it's kind of ingrained a little bit there.
And that's the other cool thing about like this whole diorama here is Sanwa and Futaba are I would probably think the two longest standing brands out there. Copropo has been around, or KO Propo has been Popo. That one, the other one, they've been around for a long time too. But I mean, going way back to the brush days, it was Futaba and Sanwa. Those were the two.
Yeah, they're
big
definitely
brands.
the Ford and Chevy of RC radios.
For some reason, Madness is an Airtronics / Sanwa house.
Yeah, for sure.
When I ran Oval, it was you never saw an Airtronics radio.
Well, I think it's like 50-50. Some racers use Futaba, so I'd say it's about...
Well, it wasn't 50-50 on Tuesday, I can tell you that much.
Well, yeah.
There was one guy, or two...
Three.
There was three. There was 3 guys that were using the 7PXR, and one of which who let me keep one for today. Shout out to Eric, which I already did. Everybody else, M17 or M44.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Personally, I like the ergonomics of the Airtronics Sanwa radios. I also like the aesthetics better.
You felt this? You felt the 7?
Compared to the... Yeah, go ahead and put the dice.
I'm saying the grip on the
compared to the
7PX is real.
Spectrums. I don't like how the Spectrums...
The grip on a 7PX is nice.
Yes.
The Futabas are... Yeah, see, that's
Feels good, right?
That's sexy. That's a killer radio.
Yeah.
Or at least the feel is. The other thing that impressed me when I went from the cheapie to the 44, here, get this away from me so I don't do something dumb, was how much faster it was. I genuinely felt more connected to the vehicle on the track.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is something I definitely wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
All right, so not to steal the show from Tyler here, but personal experience, seeing as I sell a lot of race cars, bash cars, the sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of explaining to them before the show. I kind of do bashing and racing radios, kind of two separate things for me. Not that you can't use one for both. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to buy 2 different radios. But
the needs are usually different.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not need to spend the money on the high-end radio if you're just bashing.
Yeah, so talking a little bit more about the radios here. We kind of talked to DX3 here with the vintage cars and the cars, just try to get it going and run it. I just need a radio. Don't really care what it does. Just need the car to move, work, and I'm just going to put it away. I don't really care.
Steering throttle on, off.
Yeah, it does the job. It'll let you play with your car. But I mean, that's about it. But it does they made it for $100 to do that. Okay, they didn't make this to impress anybody, and it does its job. And then I was talking to them a little bit before about this DX5C, which does get some hate. Don't get me wrong. And we're going to talk about the Futaba in the same category because I use these kind of interchangeably. So the DX5C I use mostly for bashing and rock crawling. It has a lot of nice features for rock crawling in there, like 4-wheel steer settings, dig setup, mixing. Things like that. So that's pretty nice to use and fairly intuitive, which I like.
That's awesome. Because back when... I'm always this guy. But going back 20 years, if you had a 4-wheel steer monster truck, it was hard to get a radio with those features.
Right.
But under $200.
Right. So this one is it's basically this one's $200 once you get a receiver to do that with it. But you can plug in your second steering into auxiliary 1. And then go into the radio and mix steering with auxiliary 1, and it'll automatically do 4-wheel steer for you.
That's so nice.
And crab walk, you can set it to a button. You want to crab walk it or steer together, the whole show. So Spectrum has definitely got that down, which if they say, I want it for a rock crawling, all right, let's just go Spectrum. Let's not worry about the Futaba right now. But then they're like, oh, I got a 2-wheel drive buggy. I said, all right, let's go Futaba, skip the Spectrum. Reason being, when I'm using this radio, which I have used on the racetrack, as Tyler P. had just mentioned, the latency between the radio and the car. Now, I know it's a hard sale, and you're like, Tyler, you're smoking. You can't tell the difference between that radio, this radio. Listen,
Yes, you can.
Absolutely
Listen.
can.
it is something that you have to try, and I am always willing to let somebody try my radio compared to theirs to feel it. And every single time I've done it, they're like, "Wow, you're right." I mean, it just feels so connected to the car. I mean, I just, it turns this, that, and then so the other day, I didn't have a radio connected to my V6, and I was like, let me grab that DX5. I'll just run that tonight. I ran it for my one qualifier, and
Was it bad?
I was like, dude, I can't do because I had it in my Mojave, right? So I just grabbed it. I didn't feel like opening a new radio that night, and I threw it in there, and I'm like, no, that's not happening. So that's the reason I got my old M12 connected to it, because I just went and grabbed that. I was like, it's something you can't really explain. It's just between you and the car. The Spectrum just doesn't have it. Sorry, Spectrum. But if you do not want to spend crazy amount of money but don't want that latency, the Futaba seems to be very good, because it's basically using the same technology as the PM and the 7PXR as far as the receivers. So if it feels pretty well connected. You can get faster receivers for the 7PXR. They do sell their fast system, I think they call it, which is incredible response. And the same with the Sanwa. They sell, oh man, I don't even know. I think they're just calling it like ultra response at this point. Something like, yeah, ultra response. It's ridiculously fast. But that's the major difference between racing and bashing, is the latency. When you're bashing and beating on it and rock crawling, I honestly can't tell. I'm just whipping it in donuts or jumping it, or who cares. But when you have to make that corner right at the right time on the racetrack, you can feel it 100%.
Well, I will say this, not to interject, but with the rock crawling with the Spectrum, the trigger is a lot better on the Sanwa than it was on the Spectrum.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's going to be smoother.
Yeah.
But I was more talking about like latency.
Yeah. But that was the other thing.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to be smooth.
Because sure. I remember when I was with my TRX4 and I was using the Spectrum, because I was just like, I'll just use a Spectrum radio for like rock crawling and not use my good radio, because you're outside, whatever, you're in the elements, so you don't want to use your good radio.
Right.
And certain like like when I was trying to climb up a rock and I was trying to get that sweet spot with the remote, the car would jump, and I was just like frustrated because I would hit a gate because the car jumped a little bit too much when I was trying to find that good.
I mean, you got to keep in mind with a lot of these radios too is straight up just physical build quality. These high-end radios may be using some kind of bearings or multiple springs or tighter tolerances. Well, I know they are using, not maybe. You're comparing, a $150 radio to a $700 radio. It's like comparing a Civic to a Ferrari. The build quality is going to be a little different.
I doubt that, but okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. Bad analogy. Owen's a bit of a Honda guy, but you get what I'm saying. It's you. You get what I'm saying.
I got nothing for that. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Olin would rather own a Honda than a Ferrari.
Blowing
so
your welds off your intake. Yeah, okay.
I would. Yes.
You would what?
I would definitely own a Honda over a Ferrari. Yes, you know that.
He's lying through his teeth. But
that is a good point, though, because I've had my
reliability.
I've had my 44 for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I don't have a maintenance program for my radio. It's basically charge the battery and turn it on and use it.
Right.
Maybe like you brush it off with a microfiber towel once in a while or something. But
I still got the plastic on the shield.
Yeah, that's driving my OCD nuts, by the way, because it's half peeled off.
Screen protector.
But yeah, yes. Like I haven't had any issues with the 44 at all.
I don't want the glass to get scratched.
No, it's okay.
But
I forgive you.
But that's what I'm saying. It's just Olin, he's feeling, you're feeling the trigger. Where I'm feeling this M17, there's basically no play in the trigger. And it's actually the Futaba's pretty good.
Brand new they are.
Yeah, these are all brand new radios.
I mean yours isn't.
But I can even feel the tension on that one.
Yeah, but
definitely different. Olin's got some miles on his,
and it still feels really good.
There's literally no wiggle in the take up.
No.
Well, and you get a level of adjustability too, because with some of the higher end radios, you can change the spring stiffness on the wheel or on the trigger, which
you can change out the trigger.
Sounds like to fit your fit if you've got sausage links.
Like this Futaba's actually got an aluminum
Little hook.
front piece. They actually sell different length front pieces depending on the width of your finger.
Right, and so with the higher end radios, that can also be an advantage. And it's again when you get into the weeds of the hobby where it's like, why do I care if there's slop between my finger and the trigger? Well, if you're going from full throttle to brake,
you
want to be fully connected on both sides of your finger, when you're engaging in either direction. But again, that's going down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So you definitely get more physical adjustability with a higher end remote. Like Tyler said, you can adjust the actual tension on the wheel softer or harder. And the same for the trigger. If you want a harder pull or a softer pull, there's all screws in there with springs, which I don't even know if the PM you can do that with. Yeah, it looks like you can adjust it on the 4 PM, which I think is about where it starts. None of these Spectrum ones do it. I think the DX5 Pro, I could do it on that one when I had it. So you kind of got it's a mid-level and up feature for adjusting tensions on things.
Well, and there's other ergonomic considerations too. Like some of these radios, you can relocate where the steering wheel is. You can move it to the other side of the radio. You can move it up or down, or getting back to
that one's the drop.
This one you can do it. The M12 you can go left or right on. You can actually move this whole thing to this side. I've done it before.
And with this one, you can also do. So there's like that little camber. I wouldn't say camber, but there's a little. You can move it either.
Oh, the angle piece.
Yeah,
I have it in there.
Yeah, I know, but you can actually go further than that.
Yeah, you can adjust the actual angle of the wheel.
Yeah.
So actually, it works for me because I actually kind of hold my radio at an angle like this naturally. So now the wheel is actually fairly straight.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
And it does it on the new one too, M17.
The 17, you can do that. The 12, the 7PX. You could do it on the DX5 Pro. I could do it on that. That had a drop-down option. And I think it can be bought afterwards for the 4. So that's something to keep in mind. I can drive with or without a drop-down. That wasn't really a game changer for me, honestly. I guess it's nice, but my hand here or here wasn't really affecting my driving style, come to find out.
Yeah.
But it's still cool that you can do it. You look cool. You look cool when you got a drop down on your radio.
Dude, it's customized, bro.
Whoa, look at his radio.
What you're more comfortable with.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up having a cool radio as a bit of a fashion show.
It kind of is.
Whoa, look at that radio.
Well, and then you get guys that go and get custom wraps on their on their radios.
Should have grabbed Tyler's
stuff.
radio.
Yeah.
He's got this all crazy wrap on his M
that matches 17. The body of the cars. And
it's a fashion show. Don't you roll up with you got that 7PXR. You roll up with it. You look like you know what you're doing right off the bat.
Even if you're a chump.
All you got to do is come set up your stuff, all matching and stuff. Whoa, this guy must know what's going on. Look at that
you gonna
radio.
run tonight? Nah, man, I got a thing. I got to pack up.
My batteries aren't working.
I just came to check it out.
See, I got a checking.
Spent all my money on my radio.
Yeah.
But all jokes aside, it is a little bit of a fashion show out there. It's pretty cool. You roll up with the some crazy looking radio like that, but definitely not necessary all the time. I don't know, where are we talking here? Between racing, bashing.
Yeah, what you recommend depending on the application.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go anything lower than a Futaba 3PV for racing. I use these all the time when I build cars ready to go. Bashing, DX5C's got my win. Building a car, don't care what's in it. DX3, that one's good. Even the Olin mentioned earlier, the ready to run Traxxas radios, they ain't terrible too if you just got to throw something in.
Yeah, they work pretty good.
The only thing I don't like too much Traxxas is you got to change all the settings through the blinking lights in the front of it, and it's kind of annoying. Whereas this one's got them just all switches right on the top, which is kind of nice. The Rugged is cool. This one, my only problem with the Rugged is the scrolling bit on the back. It's like it's touchpad, touchscreen. I don't even know what it is, but it's kind of a pain to use. It's not always responsive, but they did build the radio super rugged as they were intending to. So if you got a kid or something like that, or you're going to be in the woods crawling, I think they even got a compartment on the side of this thing, so you can put fun things in.
Snacks.
Ooh, yeah, that's fun. But if you're planning on just seeing how far you can throw your controller and still want to use it. That's a fun one.
And it's water resistant.
It's just that touchpad scrolly thing on the side. I mean, I get why they did it to keep it waterproof, but I swear a little bit inside every time I have to use it. I'm not gonna lie. The scroll wheel on the DX5 is light years easier to use, and to be honest with you, I've used this all year round. Snow, rain, water. Gave it to kids. Dropped it in the dirt. I've never broken one for what it's worth. I have found every once in a while I do get a little bit of a buggy little glitch kind of inside those radios where I have to put everything onto a new model and rebind the car because for some reason that model doesn't want to work anymore. I have noticed that with the Spectrums. I don't know what's going on there.
Not just that model, but so it's something to do with like the software they're using across the board.
Spectrum software. Like
Right.
it works really well and it's pretty intuitive to use, but occasionally
Bugs out, huh?
I don't know if it's some kind of setting that I have bumped with matched with set electronics in the car I'm working on, but I'll go back and like I can't adjust something, and then it's like, so I'll go to a new model, rebind it, and then I can adjust that setting.
Weird.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird glitch there. I don't know how big of a problem that is for everybody else, but I have noticed that, so I will touch on that. Whereas Futaba and Sanwa, I haven't had that problem with any of their software. I would say, as far as the high end radios go, like 17 and 7PX, in my experience, I think the Futaba was a little bit more intuitive to use than the M17 as far as just navigating the menu. Main reason being the touchscreen on the 7PXR is a little more natural just because we're all used to smartphones and whatnot at this point. The only trouble I have with Futaba is that they have different, I'm going to call it protocols for their receivers. They have T's and S's, FHS, T, and S. So you have to switch between bind modes in the controller, which can be a little confusing when you're just getting into it. Because if you have the radio in S mode and you have a T receiver, it won't link up. So I get a lot of guys, I can't get this to bind, You have to switch in the menu between a T and an S. One is for telemetry and one's, I don't know what S stands for, sport, I think, or something like that. So that can be a little weird, whereas Sanwa has a similar thing, but they have numbers like 3, 4, and 5. Mm-hmm. So that's a little easier to get behind because they're all labeled the receivers 3, 4, and 5. So that's cool. The M12 has the least intuitive menu I've ever used in my life. It's pretty terrible. Awesome radio, other than you have to sit down for 20 minutes to try to figure out what you want to change on it, which I'll show Tyler P now because he's tossing me a look.
Prove it.
I will prove it. So you can check this out.
Switching from different modes.
You have to hit this over button to scroll in the side menu on the bottom, and then you have to scroll down through things. And then you have to click on said thing, then you scroll to it, then you can change it.
Pain in the arse.
Yeah,
you have to cycle through out on the bottom, which is kind of annoying.
That's a lot more ACK passwords than the 44.
Sorry for the viewers there. I just had to show Tyler. It's the M12 is a great radio. Like I said, it's kind of getting phased out at this point anyway.
Well, all this stuff improves over time. Stuff, that was probably leaps and bounds ahead of what, the 11.
Oh, this was a great radio
for
years. I mean, if you can still find these for a decent deal, it's still a solid racing radio. Like I said, I've been using it. It is definitely a large radio, probably the biggest we have here. So if you're cool with that, it's still a perfectly functioning radio, and it works with all the new Sanwa receivers too. Aside from the 5s, only the 17 works with the 5s. Yep. I think that was my only gripe. Actually, I got one more gripe with the Futaba 3PV. The only thing I don't care for on this radio is the fact that they only give you a left and a right button. So when you do turn it on, and you're navigating the menu on the top, and you want to get to the last thing on the menu, you have to sit here and click this thing like 20 times and get all the way over there, then select it, and then
I think that's the hardest radio.
And then click it again to change your setting, which is fine. But when you get used to, say, Spectrum, I think it's got them beat with the scroll wheel because you can just click it, scroll to where you want, click on it again. So you can navigate through 10 things in half a second, where this one you got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, that's a bit of a that's getting a little picky, but when you got to work on these things all day and you got to set up 3, 4 of these radios in a row, and you're like,
you have carpal tunnel by the end of it.
and then you accidentally overshoot it and you got to go.
No, you got to start over.
And then you're like, come on. But other than that, it's a good radio. I think these are $140 with the receiver now, so they're actually beating out the Spectrum price wise a little bit.
I think this radio is the hardest one to bind.
Yeah, well, that's the whole trouble with the Futaba having S's and T's, is a lot of people get tripped up on that one, between the T's and the S's, because you have to go in and change it. And once you change it from an S to a T, you have to turn the radio off and then turn the radio back on, so it switches itself. So it's a little bit annoying, I'm not going to lie. Why do they do that? I don't know. I'm sure it's a pretty good reason. I just don't have the answer for it. So something to keep in mind. And also, just a public service announcement here. If you buy a radio with a receiver, you don't have to bind it to the radio. They come pre-bound. I see that all the time. They buy this radio, put this receiver in the car. Oh, I'm trying to bind it. Oh man, dog, you don't have to bind it. It's already bound.
Right.
But in the process of trying to bind it, they have now unbound it and switched the model. So then you have to go back to that model, and then I guess it's a good way to learn how to rebind it. But if you buy one with a receiver, you don't have to bind it.
Yeah, that was the biggest relief when I was doing the retro trucks for you. Because I'm like, Spectrum. I've never done anything with anything Spectrum. And I like pull it out of the box. I'm like, well, might as well try it. Everything worked. I was like,
they come, yes, pre-bound 95% of the time. I have gotten a couple that weren't, but everybody gets that Friday product. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, just something to keep in mind. I don't know if I got anything else to rattle on about that I got bottled up inside.
I'm slightly shocked at the amount of rage you had over radios.
I do work on radios a lot, so I do have some feelings about them. But like I said, if you guys do want to see some videos pertaining to one of these specifically, I'm pretty good at using all of them, so I can kind of roll you through it. Even if you want to see something specific, I don't really mind. I'll make videos for whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But just to wrap it all up here, actually, do you guys have anything else before I do the closing ceremonies?
A lot of the older receivers work on some of these new radios. So if you update from one of the older ones and go to a new one, 50% of the time your old receiver will work.
That's a good point.
Radio. So
don't assume that all your stuff is.
You can use your old receivers with your new radio. You just have to rebind it.
Because that's a significant investment.
Correct.
If you have multiple vehicles, is you're going to buy a $200 or $300 radio, and then it's like, oh, I've got another $70, $80, $90 receiver.
Correct.
You do that 3 or 4 times.
Adds up.
That's why people that are one brand probably tend to stay that brand, unless they develop some sort of unmitigated hatred for a radio.
I try them all. Whoever has the best menu wins.
Right.
I get to mess with everything.
So that's one thing.
Situation.
So if you want to switch from one radio, if you want to switch from an older radio to a newer radio, the same brand,
yeah.
9 times out of 10, your receivers you have will work with the new radio
within reason. I mean,
correct.
You can't get in the game 20 years ago. And
if you have crystals in your radio, then that's not going to work. But like I said, 9 times out of 10, the receivers you have from your old car or old radio will work with the new one. So you don't have to go crazy.
Actually, that just reminded me of something that I get asked a lot. So another question I get asked a lot is, will this radio work with my receiver? Okay. Pretty big question, general question there. You cannot use, if you have a Futaba radio, you have to use a Futaba receiver.
Correct.
Spectrum is a Spectrum receiver. Sanwa is a Sanwa receiver.
Wait, that's a thing?
I get asked this constantly. If you cannot mix and match brands, they make sure that they cannot work with each other.
I mean, they want you buying their product, not
their
competition.
It's full competition. So I do get asked that a lot, and it's not a stupid question. I get it. We all start somewhere. But you have to have matching brands basically no matter what. Now, there's some knockoff. I'm going to call them knockoff, but they work pretty good too.
Rud Dog.
Like Rud Dog. I think it's like Track Star or Hobby Star or something like that receiver. they make for the Sanwas, which are actually a pretty good price. They do the exact same thing, and arguably it's easier to plug in the plugs to them.
I have one.
Yeah.
It came in a used truck, and it hasn't, knock on wood, hasn't given me any
It's
headaches.
probably the same thing. I haven't seen any knockoff Futaba or Spectrum. That's probably more due to the fact that Futaba and Spectrum sell a range of receivers from like $35-$40 to $60 to $100.
Correct.
So whereas Sanwa is basically just selling $100 and $120 receiver, where they're just the Red Dog ones. I think are 60, 70, and then Hobby Star or Track Star. I'm probably messing that one up. They sell those things go on sale sometimes for $40-$50.
Didn't Spectrum used to have it used to be orange? It was a knockoff company. They used to sell for like $15.
I remember. I don't know if it was Spectrum or not, but I remember that receiver.
I think it was
because it was a big deal when it came out.
Yeah.
Everybody was.
I
Yeah.
think it was Spectrum. It's like
That was back. Yeah, those ones no longer work with the new radios. That was
Gotcha.
the old DSM ones. They're on DSM 2 now, I think.
Okay.
But the new Spectrum receivers are actually really nice. They got rid of the bind key finally, and it's just a button to bind it now, which is very nice. They shorten the antennas a little bit, and
they should go antennas.
they're pretty
I don't know why
compact.
They don't.
Yeah, that's another thing that I love about Sanwa / Airtronics is no antenna.
All right, so to devil's advocate here for antenna, no antenna.
To be fair,
mostly you guys are running on racetracks or relatively close to you. Olin has some exceptions in the past. But the problem we have with the antennaless is distance. Okay, so when we're doing the speed runs and drag racing, we're going 300 feet away from us. We were having a little bit of range issues at the end of the track with the antennaless receivers.
So it's a give and take then.
And that was Sanwa. I was actually having the trouble with that one. I did end up putting a Futaba antennaless one in the drag car and didn't have a problem. And I also didn't have a problem with the DX5 with the antenna sticking out of the car. I did not try the antennaless Spectrum receiver, but they do actually make one too.
Antenna sticking out of the car.
No, not out of the car.
Nerd.
It wasn't out of the car. It was it was just sticking up.
Well, no,
it wasn't out.
Do you have enough antenna left as like a flag?
Just dangling around.
Unfortunately, the speed run car that I had, it did have a longer antenna because the tube was.
But I mean, you're driving this thing.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
500 or 600 feet away.
Jeez.
So
your brake just stopping the car just rolls.
I'd say 95% of the time, the antennaless one is perfectly fine for me. But there is some specialty things where you do want to grab an antenna receiver, which they sell for all of these brands. I think you can get a Sanwa one with an antenna at this point too.
They still make them.
But yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. Antennaless.
Well, so that's another factor that you have to consider then.
Yeah.
When you walk in the shop, you need to know, how many times we said this. What are you putting it in? What do you want to do?
The only ones the radios you buy with the antennaless is the high end ones. Though I think the 17 and the 7PXR are the only two you can buy with the antennaless receiver at this point.
I think this one, when it comes with
actually
two.
This one does come with an antenna receiver now because it's the two. Oh, geez, I can't remember. They've just given numbers. It's not the 480. I think it's a 490.
492.
492. Yeah, that sounds about right. 492 receiver.
Either 492 or 493, and that one has an antenna.
Really?
Yeah, it's not much. It's like that though, isn't it? It's a short guy, isn't it?
Little long. It's maybe about like an inch to an inch and a half.
So it's still pretty short.
Yeah.
But the antenna does give you just a little bit more range and I don't know, connection, I guess, like latency. I don't know what I'm trying to tell you there, but just keep that in mind for something you're doing. Most of the time, antennaless is fine if you're driving around the yard or something like that.
You're not.
But keep that in mind. So really, again, like most things we talk about, is it comes down to what you want to do with said item.
Correct.
It may be worth it for you to spend $700 on a radio. It may be complete overkill and not necessary at all. And you could probably, if you're building your vintage Hornet and you're going to be putting it on the shelf, this radio is going to be fine. There's no need to pair a $700 radio with it if it's just going to be used once a year.
If, however, you want to do that, RC Madness does have M17s in stock.
I will no way stop you from doing that. But you have options, and you got to weigh them back and forth. And of course, we're here at Madness, and I will give you my honest opinion about any radio, whether I like it or don't like it, or I like this, that. I don't lie. I have really no reason to. I don't really care. I'll tell you what I think about them. Honestly.
Such a sales pitch.
Hey,
I don't really care.
Honesty sells, man. I'm not gonna.
No, it does.
I'm not gonna sell you something just to sell
If he
it.
sells you something just to sell you, he's going to be the one to have to fix
Well,
it.
he's gonna.
I'm gonna be
Yeah.
most likely the one trying to help you use it. So
Right.
there's no. I mean, I might as well try to get it right the first time. You know what I mean?
People call me 10:30 at
You
night.
sold me.
Yeah. So, that being said, that is the majority of the radios that we sell here at Madness, and our opinion on each one, more or less. Of course, we didn't touch on every feature of these radios.
No, we're not.
The
take
Futaba,
forever.
for example, comes with a book that's like 60, 70 pages long, and
So those are M17.
yeah, it's ridiculous, honestly. But we can do individual videos about them. And shout out to all the guys that let me borrow their radios. And Tyler posting up his radio bag over there.
Get a carrying case.
Yeah,
If you're going to drop your radio,
if you're
this
going
is the way
to
do
spend
it.
a significant amount of money on your radio, a case
You wanna have a case.
is probably worth it. I think ProTech and J-Concept's 50 to 100, depending on
With
how fancy it is. Futaba does sell a really nice branded one themselves. I don't know how much that one is. I think it's the better part of 150, but
I'm good.
it does say
Samsonite.
It does say 7. Yeah.
I was way off.
It does say Futaba 7PX on it, and it's a very nice bronze color. But yes, it's very
Sparkly.
fancy. It's very fancy. But anyway, I think that's all we have for you tonight, folks. Of course, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit me up if you guys
Share.
if you want anything for us to talk about. Hit me up, and we'll talk about it. And if it's something, if you got something you want to talk about and you want to come visit with us, let me know. We're looking to expand the show, obviously, and help people out. But as always, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you guys next week in the next episode. Have a good holiday, and we will see you after. Peace out, guys.